Because I got to get this call. It's Axel wants to talk to me about some things real quick. I'll be right back.
Have some patience, Bobby. Have some patience. All we need is a little patience.
Axel, I can't talk to you right now. I know you're really upset about the PPP and how Munchen's handling it. If you just tweet to him, I'm sure he'll get back to you.
Don't you cry. Don't you cry.
I can give you a call back after this, Axel, but I got to get on this call. Okay, thank you. I told him
And there it is. There it is.
Good.
Bobby Stuckey with Axl Rose on speed dial number 1.
Okay. I don't think there's any reason to waste time here. We're here with a man who needs very little introduction, but we're going to give him one anyway. Mr. Bobby Stuckey of Frosca Food and Wine, Pizzeria, Scarpetta, and just Tavernetta, Sunday Vinyl, just unbelievable restaurants. Man of the industry, and also deeply involved in IRC at this point. And why don't you tell us, Bob, what IRC is all about and what's going on right now?
Sure. Well, welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us. My name is Bobby Stuckey. I'm a restaurant worker and a restaurateur. And 8 weeks ago today, there was no such thing as the IRC, Independent Restaurant Coalition. And we really started it 8 weeks ago, 7.5 weeks ago. And it is an advocacy group for independent restaurants. So non-publicly traded restaurants, less than 20 units per. So independent restaurants, smaller versus larger, not versus, but smaller rather than larger. Like we're advocating for smaller independent restaurants. It's a organization that probably we should have started 20 years ago. We started it during this crisis when we all woke up and didn't realize what a huge employment creator we are and how fragile we are. So if you want more information with that, www.saverestaurants.com. You can see everything that we're doing there right now.
Okay. You know, something that I think about all the time when I see IRC is how is the IRC different than the NRA, meaning the National Restaurant Association?
Well, we both care about the industry immensely. The difference, and there's a lot of things that we are lined up with the NRA, but then there's some things that we stand stronger on. We really, well, for one thing, we have asked, as of last Wednesday, we sent a letter, and we'll discuss this later, for a stabilization fund for independent restaurants. And when we did that, it's a little bit different than the NRAs in the sense we are saying, hey, we're not going to have publicly traded companies part of that. We're not going to have large franchises and large chains. And it's not that we don't think those are included in the restaurant industry. It 100% is. It's just not part of the independent restaurant industry and the Independent Restaurant Stabilization Fund ask, because we feel as a collective group, that's what needs really, really a lot of help.
Got it. Bobby, one question that I think I could use a little help on understanding is, you know, when you look at the what happens on, you were talking about the NRA, are they on the same page as the IRC when it comes to all these requests, or are they? Well, are they signed on with the same on all these bills?
Yes and no. And that's really a great question for the NRA to see how they feel about it. I don't want to answer for them.
Sure.
But their ask is broader and bigger and more inclusionary to those franchises, chains, publicly traded companies. And we have a feeling like, hey, if you're a publicly traded company, you have access to funds that maybe a single operator,
more resources.
More resources.
Got it. And then to continue to help clarify, there's a lot of action that we're talking about on the federal level, but then there's also the state level. How can someone help? Can you help us navigate that? You know, is IRC doing the work just on the federal level? Are they doing it on both? What should people do on the state level to complement, et cetera?
Yeah, I think it's to get to know your state restaurant, or like here we have Colorado Restaurant Association, you know, and all those feed up to the NRA, National Restaurant Association. But each state has a different relationship with the NRA mothership, and you have to decide if you're an operator in Oklahoma or if you're an operator in Iowa or San Francisco, you need to choose, hey, I feel really well aligned with my local chapter. I'm going to work with them, and I'm also going to participate or keep attuned of what's going on with the IRC, if that's how you choose. Look, we would love all those organizations to want to work with us and fight the battle to stabilize 11 million jobs.
Yeah.
I mean, if you would have asked, if Dustin and I and you and Mike would have had a bottle of wine 9 weeks ago, like right when La Palais was going on, right before this happened, and if you would have said, Bobby, did you know that your industry is the biggest private job creator in America? I would not have had that answer.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. And now we realize that our industry dwarfs other industries as job creators, but no one knew how powerful we were in the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what our job really has to be.
Well, I just saw the unemployment numbers that came out today, and it said that I think 20 million filed, and of those, almost 5 million were restaurant workers.
5.5 is what
workers. So 1 in 4 are impacted by it. And the other stat was that 40% of all restaurant workers are unemployed right now, which is devastating. I'm not sure how that stacks up with other industries, but it would be interesting to see that.
Well, and also another thing that we miss, I'd written an op-ed for Food and Wine. It was called "The Cornerstone Species." Is, look, it's kind of like economic biology. You take out the independent restaurant, 11 million jobs. This is the staggering thing. There's 10 million jobs that are not restaurant workers, but their job is solely ancillary to the restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
We're closed. And let's be I think it's very important to discuss for those of you on the call that aren't restaurant people, but you just want to hear what's going on. Remember, restaurants did not have poor guidance. Restaurants did not do anything wrong. Matter of fact, restaurants did their civic or gubernatorial duty to be closed for the safety of everybody. So we got closed. So we were the first to close. We're going to be the last to open. And there's all these jobs that need us to come on. I mean,
yeah, and that's what bothers me about some of the thought process out there, is that restaurants are looking for a handout or a bailout. This is not a bailout. I know you're going to explain to us what exactly IRC is looking for, but for me, it's just not a bailout. It is the quid pro quo. Please shut down to protect our community. In exchange, we will help you reopen with money. I mean, it just seems so clear to me. It's not a bailout. It is absolutely an exchange, a bargain for exchange. And I'm tired of hearing it as a bailout. But what is IRC looking for?
Well, what IRC is looking for is, so first, our first project was to work on the PPP, because there's some hiccups in the PPP, and we could go down that rabbit hole all day, but that was our initial goal. We got to help fix the PPP, and we really messaged that. Look, it's not anybody's fault, but the PPP works really well. Let's say if you're an accounting firm and you're all working at home for 8 weeks and revenue's down a little bit, that's perfect for you. You got all your employees paid for 8 weeks. But if you take something like Chicago, so we don't even know when we're going to open in Colorado, but Chicago, they're not able to have in-room dining until June 26th. Currently, unless Axel gets some really good vibes with Munchen, because he could change this, the end date for the PPP is June 30th. So in Chicago, you can't really even use it properly to open. He only has, those operators only have 4 days of business.
And I heard today that there's still, of the second tranche, the second part of the PPP, there's still either only 40% has been hit or there's still 40% left. It surprises me that, one, that's still available, two, people haven't applied. But if you do apply now and you get it by the end of the week or the end of the month, you have very little time to use it. And
To
one of our viewers, Rob Intner, who's a great restaurateur up in Aspen, just asked, is it too late to fix PPP? It's probably never too late, but there's no indication that it's going to be fixed. But I think Bobby's asking for I think you're asking for something different than a fix in PPP.
We have asked for a fix. We've pressured on it. We've been heard. Both sides of the aisle understand it needs to be fixed. We've had some great conversations on both sides of the aisle. I mean, I feel really lucky in Colorado. We have some engaged senators, have had great conversations with Cory Gardner's group, had great conversations with Michael Bennett's. They both understand that. Bravo to them. That's what we need across the board. But we can't just stop at that, because the PPP is as it is created, is an 8-week Band-Aid for what could be an 18-month or a 24-month problem. So we can move on from the PPP, but that's really part of the problem. So last Wednesday, through a lot of work from a lot of people at the IRC and great guidance from Thorn Run, who guides us, we released an ask to the Hill for a restaurant stabilization fund. So as Mike said, no, it's not a bailout, it's a stabilization fund. And that's what we're messaging and working on very, very hard. And it's very interesting time, because restaurateurs are usually a long view work, plug away, plug away, plug away. Frosca, we've had 15 years, you're trying to improve it a little bit each day. Right now, we can't look at it that way. It is a sprint, because I feel like we have 3 to 4 weeks to get policy done on the Hill in DC to stabilize an industry that makes up 11 million jobs. And so, just so we can have context to that 11 million jobs, let's just say the agricultural community got a really wonderful stabilization package. They got a bailout based on 100% based on us not being open. Look, I'm a huge fan of the airlines. I consult for American Airlines. I love the airlines. I'm just using this as a numerical reference. They got a stabilization package based on 600. And I'm not going to say who, but I was on a congressperson's call. Their chief of staff said, Bobby, you've got to understand, they make up a lot of jobs. And I said, you are 100% right. They make up actually 650,000 jobs. Now, I didn't go to MIT. I'm not a math wizard, but 650,000 jobs, a lot of jobs, but considerably less than 11 million. I know I went to Northern Arizona University. It's not Ivy League, but 11 million, more than 650,000, a lot more, 15 times more. Once I got my iPhone out and figured that out. So we really need this. We need both bipartisan support. You can't just have the Dems get it done for you. You just can't have the Republicans get it done for you. We need to find those strategic alliances that hear our needs, agree, take it to the whole.
And Bobby, you've gotten a crash course in public policy over the past 2 months. How does it all work? What's the process look like? So, PPP, that train's on the track. With this new restaurant stabilization budget, walk us through. I forgot. I think in school they showed how a bill becomes a bill, but I need a refresher. So tell me how that works.
What happens in our case is, so you release that, and then we do. Look, and remember, these are all restaurant people that are doing this volunteer, like going nuts. Like there's some people that I work with that I'm literally seeing 8 hours a day in Zoom calls as we work on this. So what we did is we divided into a grassroots piece. Our political strategist, Angela Cowders, she has that grassroots. And so she might say, okay, Bobby, you're in charge of the Rocky Mountains. You're going to send a letter to each one of your key strategic congresspeople or senators and try to get a 15-minute window. And then Jenny in Seattle, this is what you're going to do. Carolyn Stein, this is what you're going to do in California. Thomas Keller, get after it, get to work. And she'll delegate that to us. And then we will reach out. And sometimes you get a congressperson that will let you listen to you, or they'll delegate you to one of their staff members. They're all really busy. And then you tell the story. You tell the story of what's going on. And this is really important, because if I didn't know how big of a work generator we were, it's not their job to understand every industry. And the fact that we have not had a unified voice, they just didn't know. So they wrote the PPP not realizing what was going on. They were trying, it was a heroic effort. It was really fast. And quite frankly, they thought it was going to be over by Easter. And then, so what we'll do is, let's just say in our case, we'll reach out to Michael Bennett. Charlie in Michael Bennett's office is like, Bobby, thanks for the letter. Do you have 15 minutes? And I'm like, yeah, drop anything. Get on a call for 15 minutes. I'll get someone from Thorn Run to help me, our lobbyist group, because you're just not going to send a busboy like myself into a conversation without some backup support. And then we'll just say, Charlie from Michael Bennett's office, this is what we've got going on. This is what we're thinking. Do you like this? And they might say, oh, I like this. I like that. We were working on something here. Let's talk together. At the exact same time, Robert St. John in Mississippi might be talking to somebody, and it might be on the other side of the aisle. And then if you get some interest, what you hope happens, and this is what we're hoping on, is that you get one person from the Dems and one person from the Republicans to say, hey, we both agree on this. Let's march this through.
So it's like a little campfires all around the country that you want to get together to be a bonfire. So it's just kind of, you're just waiting for the kindred to strike.
And it's interesting, as you said, I didn't know anything about public policy 8 weeks ago. One thing that's really can be discouraging is everyone has a different agenda. Everyone has a different thing that they seem to identify with. But also, if you kind of just listen right now politically, you can see where restaurants are falling a little bit between the cracks, independent restaurants. We don't have a huge unionized force like the airlines, right? So they don't have a union spokesperson for them representing all these voters. We don't have that. And then on the flip side, maybe there's a part of maybe the Dems or something like that are so focused at this moment, it's so fashionable to be so focused on the uber progressive, the workers, that we're forgetting where the workers work, meaning at a restaurant. So there's a lot of work to be done. It does slow things down because there's certain factions in both parties that you don't fall into their sweet spot.
Mm-hmm. And I think you mentioned, when I remember when we were about the lack of understanding of the restaurant industry. And I remember when we were doing a lot of work on hospitality included at USHG, talking with politicians, whether it's on the state level or the national level, really not even understanding the concept of tip minimum wage and the tip credit and what the impact on the business. And so it's just the inner workings and the economics of the restaurant industry, the flow through, it's probably one of the least efficient industries out there, which is also how it employs so many people from a labor standpoint. And I think being able to educate them on that is really key to understand how this stimulus can really help them.
Yeah. And I think it's key to talk about, a lot of industry, a lot of politicians have dreamt of finding the next manufacturing jobs, where you can be part of the American way. You don't need a college education. You can just roll up your sleeves and go to work. Well, we have that. It's called the restaurant industry. and it's in every frickin' city. It takes everybody. If you're new to the country, you don't speak the language, it's a true meritocracy. You can go to work in restaurants, and you can even become an owner. Maybe you couldn't afford to go to college. You can go to work in the restaurant industry and go up the ranks. What if you need a second chance? What if you are someone who, when you were younger, you didn't have a great attorney like Mike Laszlo, and you made a mistake and you got a felony? You can still work in the restaurant business. And for a lot of people don't realize that there's a part of marginalized the United States. They can't get jobs in other industries. The restaurant industry takes you. And that's
also think about it, that there's not a factory in every city that you're in. There's a restaurant in almost every city you're in. So if you move across the country, you can even take those skills with you, whereas they might be so specialized. If you're working in a car manufacturing factory, and then you move to New York City, that doesn't necessarily transfer and say, what do I do now with my skills? But the restaurant industry skills are adaptable regardless of where you go.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, and Bobby, anybody can be an owner. If you work hard and you have some success, you can be an owner. I mean, that's what other business gives you that?
Yeah.
Or industry gives you that?
Yeah. 100% meritocracy. You know, I want to circle back. One thing on that is, but you're right, Sabato. That's what we need to do. We need to message to the people on the Hill. We need to describe, either through ourselves or help with lobbyists, storytelling why this is different, and let them understand. Yes, we work on smaller margins. I mean, I think sometimes it's really black and white. Like, I think it's interesting when I tell a politician, I say, hey, let me just lay it out to you. 2019, our industry average was a 6% profit. I mean, most CEOs in America don't have the guts to run a company in an industry that has a 6% profit. To put it in perspective, as someone who had restaurants during the last recession, some industries they did get a bailout. They made a mistake. They had bad governance. They needed a bailout, i.e. the banking industry. I have a lot of friends in the banking industry, but let's just realize they got a bailout. They had restrictions put on their bailout. And under those restrictions, they were complaining to have them removed when they had an industry average at 19% profit. Could you imagine how strong the restaurant industry could be if you were restricting us and we were at 19% profit? I mean, just remember, that's 3 times more our industry average during 19, which was one of the best years ever. The economy was raging.
And so now let's look ahead to that, the $120 billion restaurant stabilization fund. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Now that's a proposal, just to clarify. And when you're putting that proposal together, can you outline who it's designated for and any type of criteria or qualifications that you tried to weave in there?
Yes. So the NRA came up with their own proposal, which included everybody, chains, publicly traded companies, and all this. And what we noticed from the PPP was, first of all, during the PPP, only 8% of all the PPP went to any restaurants. So only 8%. So, and then you've heard through the news what happened, how it was administered. Obviously, the people of most need didn't get a shot at it. So we know that. So we said, wait a second, here's this big package. We need to do a package. So we took their IBIS report numbers of how they built their package for the whole industry. We carved that back for independents. So non-publicly traded, non-units with more than 20. Like, I can't have 20 Froskas. Non-publicly traded and non-franchisees and chains. Because we look at those franchisees and chains, they're wonderful operators. They do a great job. They can live in that bigger bill with the NRA. We don't think they should be elbowing for funds from a single operator that, you know, we need to protect that. So ours is more about smaller, not just tiny, I mean, mid-size and independent operators versus large, not versus, but other than larger. So that's what we're asking. So that number was a calculated number based on what we would need for salaries, replacement of revenue if we are in a situation like throughout the whole year that we're 50% stabilized, right? Because no landlords we haven't heard a big movement of landlords saying, here, let's reduce your rent 50%, even though the city or the government's asking you to be at 50% occupancy. The supplies, the stabilization needs. I mean, I think a lot of people are focused on how you get open, but let's say if you need 2 disposable masks per shift, per employee, at the current burn rate, our group at 225 employees, that'll be $306,000 next year in masks that are just masks.
If you can find them.
If you can find them for our little restaurant group. So this stabilization is like, look, we need to get to where because none of us have a crystal ball, where we can get through 2020, be stabilized. So these are really wages, lost revenue. A lot of people went into this closure with a trail of accounts payable. Like, think about it. January is a very slow month across the United States in restaurants, with the exception of ski areas and maybe warm climate resort areas. But most of us, January, very, very slow. For us in Colorado, take the mountains out of the equation. If you look at Denver, Fort Collins and everything, February slowest or snowiest February ever. So a lot of people go into March with a little bit of a large accounts payable because you're thinking, hey, it's springtime. I'm here to get to work. I'm going to whittle this down. That's the cycle of the restaurant industry. Then you got closed overnight. So these restaurants also, part of that 120 billion is, we need inventory. It's different to close a restaurant than to close a creative agency or a law office. Like if Mike closes his law office, he's not losing that table and a lot of product is being flushed down the toilet or given to employees. It's great that you give all your employees a send-off grocery bag, but that's $10,000. And then to get reopened, you're going to have to rebuy that product, reproduce it, all that. So you need to give these restaurants capital because the PPP does not cover the capital to get reopened. There's a lot of guidance that's out there that's saying if a restaurant or if there's a flare up, there will be another closure. So you need to have access to capital to say, God forbid, what happens if you're open for 30 days and then you're closed for another 3 weeks?
It's killer.
It's killer. So that fund gives them access. Now, that doesn't mean all the 120 billion needs to be used. We have asked with guidance that whoever takes this, we're willing to say, hey, if all of a sudden there's a vaccine in August and we're back ripping, we're not going to need all those funds.
You see it almost functioning as like a line of credit, maybe administered through the SBA, where you grab at it as needed, or just buckets of money like PPP, where come tell us your number and get it. How do you see it being administered, and what are the qualifications for you?
We're looking into that right now. It seems like the SBA has had a tough time administering these things. Mm-hmm. So you would have to ask Congress and Senate they figure out the resources of administering this.
Who else could take that large of money and distribute it to businesses? I mean, who other than banks and SBA?
Well, I mean, look, I haven't brought this up on a call because I don't think the insurance industry really loves me right now. But think about it. Medicare is administered a lot of times by these large insurance companies. They really understand that. And there's many ideas that you could figure that out.
Yeah, any channel that's going out of the restaurant, if you could theoretically flip the switch and reverse it and have it go back in, that could be a potential way of looking at that.
Yeah, and I think one thing we have not brought up that I think is really important for people to know, our industry, 90 cents of every dollar goes back into the economic driver.
Mhm.
So if I have $100 in sales, $90 are going back to wages, food purchases.
So Bobby, question with pushing this thing through, given that the NRA has a seat at the table, if you will, and a kind of a more powerful voice and has been around longer, did you guys consider working with them on maybe just a larger package overall that then you could kind of split up after the fact, like maybe ask for 240 billion and then say, you guys keep 120, we're going to keep 120 and use it as such? How did you think about that?
We did, and we sent a delegation to discuss with them. That would really be an answer for them why they don't feel like they want to do that with us. But yeah, we did go to them on that. That would have been the easier route. The more, the merrier. As I said earlier, ours does exclude publicly traded companies, franchise chains.
Bob, we have a question here from Jill from Elena up in Aspen. She's asking if a restaurant has accepted PPP, would they be excluded from participating in the stabilization fund if and when the IRC would get that? And I know those are details and specifics, but has that been a consideration?
100% is a consideration. And I don't want to blow the cover on some things, but there's some senators out there working on their own projects that are of some similarity to us. And the fact that they've reached out to the IRC to ask to help us pin that is this is a huge week for the IRC.
Okay.
Like, we have had Congress people and senators reach out and say, man, we like what you're doing. Can you take a look at what we're working on? That's amazing. Mm-hmm. All the conversations that we're having, we're saying, hey, if you got that PPP, there should be a way that rolls into your package.
And Bobby, as we're talking about this, we'll move on to some other topics here, but what can people on this call do to help move these forward? What's a good call to action? Because, I signed up a while ago for something on the IRC, the PPP signature. Is that carry over into this? What are
So the same thing that you did for your signature for the PPP, which I think worked out really well. You just go in, you put in your zip code, and it auto fills for you. You can do that now for the stabilization fund. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think that's really important. I think grassroots wise, anyone who feels like they understand the fragility of our industry, I think there's a lot of ancillary companies that maybe I don't know everybody, but if someone out there knows someone at a huge real estate firm, like I think wholesale distributors, real estate groups, they should be helping stabilize restaurants. Mm-hmm. It's in their best interest. If you're a really big distributor and you're, look, as I said, I didn't go to MIT, but if you do 80% of your business on premise, you want those things stabilized.
And I do think, as we're talking about these, we're talking on the federal level, but I do think it's a two-pronged approach, because what we're talking about, whether it be PPP or whether it be talking about this 120 billion stabilization fund, that's good for the short term. That gets us over this hump. But the decisions that are being made right now on the state level, those are the ones that I think can help us stabilize the industry state by state, city by city for the long term, and change how we operate. And some of the laws that we're working within that are carries overs from the 70s, the 80s, when it was a very different time. And I think states are very open to looking at what they can do to better support restaurants and make them flourish, because they're the ones that are losing tax revenue. They're the ones that are helping pay the unemployment, and they're bearing the burden. So that's why I think it's important to sign this, tell your Congress folks, but also to write your governors and your mayors as well, so they can help make those nuances. It's kind of like the big seasoning from above, but then what's the final touches that you want to put on the state level?
Yeah, look, we realize, at least I realize, that as long as I am a restaurant person, which will be there in my entire life, I will be working with the IRC to help make our industry better. The mere fact that we have an industry that means, combined with ancillary jobs and our jobs, 20 million jobs, we need to get better at stabilizing our industry forever. I'll give you a great example of things that we'll have to work on after this crisis. I remember 10 years ago, I doing a remodel at Frosca and creating PL, doing all this construction, about $1 million remodel. And one of our guests is like, was from a creative agency. And he's like, hey, Bobby, we're remodeling our offices. Did you get those big benefit packages from the city and the county for tax breaks on your construction stuff? I said, no, I'm going to go down there and get those. So I went down there the next day and asked for them. And they're like, oh, no, those are for real businesses, not the restaurant business. That's what they said to me. I should have started the IRC right then. Because if you look at it macro wise, you need to make our industry better. You need civic, state, federal, and customers all to make it better. On the civic side, think about how many cities and states threw millions of dollars of incentives to try to get 25,000 Amazon jobs for the headquarter number 2. You have never heard of a city or a state give any tax incentives for an independent restaurant to open up on their main street. It's never happened. There are countless companies that get packages to go into their cities. And I look at Frosca Inc. We started as a small 19-table restaurant with 20 employees, and now we're 225 employees. They get matching 401k, they get insurance. Those are real jobs, contrary to what the city of Boulder thought. And they told me that 10 years ago. Those are real jobs. Those are real benefit packages. These businesses like Frosca and all these great independent restaurants out there, we deserve cities to say, this is important. We want to have restaurants taken care of. Then on the state level, we've got to look at some of these laws, from tip credits and all this, where we can get people a good living wage, but how we can really make that work. We need to get to the nitty gritty on that. So you need on the city, the state, and then the federal level. And then customers moving forward need to be educated so they understand their participation needs to be different. We spend 9% in the United States of our family budget on food. Europe, industry average is just about 20%. So we don't pay enough for our food, and we need to learn for those changes. I mean, I look at Tracy Desjardins. She was a trailblazing chef. She's a great human. She's awesome. She knows how to run a restaurant. She opened Jardiniere 25 years ago. The price of the roast chicken and vegetables was $18. 25 years later, pretty much it's $22. That doesn't work. Doesn't work. You can't have $22, a $4 increase on a plate of food industry-wide. But we're fine with getting our Supreme t-shirt and our Air Jordans that are twice the price of what they used to be.
Yeah.
So Bobby, I think it's great what you guys are doing. And I think just as a reminder for those listening, the way to help right now directly is to go back onto the IRC website and sign that petition. Even if you have gone on and signed the previous one, this is different. So log back on again and sign again.
And real quick, I put those links.
Spread the word about that.
Real quick, I put those links in the discussion tab. I'm sorry, in the chat right now. So you can go there and we'll throw them in the discussion chat tab as well.
Great.
So to kind of move on from that and get more into what you guys are doing at Frosca Inc. currently. I know you're in your, I think, second week of doing your meal kits. Love for you to talk us through the process that got you here. I know you did not jump into this immediately. You guys took a little time to kind of pause, think about it, understand what you wanted to do. Let us know how you were thinking about that and how things are going for you so far and what you've learned.
100%. Well, we look at it this way. I made a choice, as the leader of the company, I made a choice I did not want to do to go. And on the record, I have a lot of dear friends and peers that are doing a lot with to go. But when we got closed gubernatorially, I said, wait a second. He's closing us because social distancing is important. I didn't see how we could do to-go orders and properly really do the right social distance. Is that fair to my employees? Is that fair to my guests? No. Do I want the revenue? Yes, but no, I'm not going to do that. So we did not do that. I got a lot of backlash from all sorts of people, from employees to guests. Why aren't you doing that? And that was the standard. Then we started looking into 5 weeks in, what is the safest way to do something? So we said, the thing about to go is you can't monitor the peaks and the valleys when people are calling. All of a sudden you're cooking faster to get these going. So we came up with our packages. And last week we did our first one. This week we're doing our second. And what it is the kitchen team can put together a course that it lets people cook it at home, maybe do something that they thought was daunting, and we're going to make it easy for them. So like last week we did a risotto. That seems very daunting to people. We filmed Chef Eduardo in his home kitchen doing risotto just like the guests would. And then we threw in a bottle of wine, and then we reached out to our winemakers friends in Friuli. We did an interview with Carlin and I, so that at home they're getting a sommelier winemaker experience at home while they're cooking dinner about the wine. And then we also had an interview with the olive oil, one of the products. So this week we're doing the same type of idea. We expand it a little, tweak it a little bit. And we divide it between Tavernetta and Frosca. So 120 kits each, so 250 kits. Everything's prescribed out. Guests show up on 15-minute increments. So they're not getting out of the car. They text us when they arrive. They pop their trunk. We put it in, give them a big hug from afar. So we wanted to make sure that no one, not a single employee, is closer than 6 feet from each other. No guests. So it is 100% social distanced packages.
Love it.
And
how is this?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, how has this been going so far? And what have you learned in this last 2 weeks of doing that?
We learned a lot. I think you will see at-home experiences part of the agenda post this. I look at things. I'm 50 years old. I just had my 20th wedding anniversary. I think about if a couple is having their 30th anniversary this year and they're 60, you can't even have a 10 top in Colorado once we reopen. So I think we want to use this time to get ready. So let's say if you're a couple and you've got your 4 kids and their spouses, you want to have a 10 top get together in July in Colorado, that might not even be legal in a restaurant. So these at-home packages will let you celebrate with us, and you can feel safe and you can do that. So
were there any pain points as you went across it in terms of that you had to work out, or the things that you struggled with until the end said, that's the solution?
So many little things, from like first of all, getting the whole team to do that in a week, everything from, like me miscounting the olive oil bottle. That was a pain point. And Alicia yelling at me, Bobby, we're 3 olive oil bottles short. Okay, so that was a pain point. So you got to get back into that muscle memory, and everyone in the industry will realize if you've been closed for 5 to 7 weeks to 12 weeks to whatever it may be, that muscle memory is really, really tough. And we're going to try to, and that was like we said, we only wanted to increase it 25% packages this time, so we could ace it, try to learn each week.
So how many is that you're doing now each week?
So we did 200,
okay.
225 this time. Probably do, 250. See what we do next week. So learning about that, learning so we use talk and we want it to go through talk. How do you best sell one of these in talk if you have choices? So no choices last week. This week you have a choice of bolognese or primavera, which is vegetable. Next week we'll add gluten-free. All these,
Interesting.
nuances.
And
So, Bobby,
quick,
when you,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
we have a question popping in. I think it's topical for this. Part of your to-go takeout package is a bottle of wine, as you mentioned. And you've also mentioned that this is something you would carry on forward in the future of the business, or potentially. How do you feel the liquor laws might, do you see any indication that the liquor laws will allow you to do that going forward? Do you have any insight on that?
I don't have any insight. It's our governor has been really calculated, and he's doing a really great job. His team, very open. They're listening to all of us, but he is someone that usually prescribes things maybe a month out. So that's what he did on this last one. Right when it was about to expire, he extended a month. That's his leadership call on that. We look at someone like Michael Hancock in Denver, his leadership style. And I think both these guys are doing an awesome job with their teams. Mayor Hancock was much different. March 16th, he said, hey, team, definitely close till May 11th, then we'll revisit, which was a leadership call, which was much more, how like in a lot of states, they just kept extending it 2 weeks. Yeah. And that's where you got this kind of like,
hurry up and wait,
quarantine fatigue and people doing crazy things like rioting and things like that. In Denver, we were told you're closed till May 11th. So now if we're extended to June 1, it's only a 1-2 week deal. But yeah, we wait for guidance. And this is what across the United States, you need leaders that give guidance. This is not to be messed around with. They need to give guidance. They need to give leadership. They need to tell the guests and the restaurants how to operate.
So, speaking of leadership, Bobby, I mean, I think everybody in the industry really looks at you as one of the leaders of this industry. And you've been talking a lot about being safer closed. Can you maybe talk about that, how you're perceiving that, and then maybe also how your current strategy and that mindset fits into your long-term goals for your restaurant?
Well, yeah, we work daily. Our executive team works daily on trying, because we haven't gotten guidance yet. We'll get it. We haven't gotten it yet on how we're going to open. And we've actually given some guidance to Governor Polis's team, what we thought. We thought we were safe for close. That, hindsight will always be 2020, but I still feel like we made the right call. When we reopen, we have 4 different restaurants, all different styles. I see for the near time, I think everything will have to go to a reservation policy. You can't have, like at Tavernetta. Tavernetta is a restaurant that, yes, we take reservations, but a huge walk-in component. You just can't have 2, 3, 4, 5, 4 tops walking in at the same time, looking for a table, waiting for a table anymore. Restaurants are going to need to get good at messaging with their guests, how to do reservations. And, people will say, well, my restaurant's always been walk-ins. How do I do that? Well, we're going to have to learn, and you're all going to have to learn together. Pizzeria Locale is a walk-in restaurant. I think until we get this figured out to be the safest way, you got to embrace reservations. The guests and the operators have to embrace that. I think you just can't have scrums at the bar waiting for your seat. People are going to have to not even walk in the building. Do you have 2 spots at the bar? No, we don't. We will in, it looks like 30 minutes. Can I put my name down? Will you text me when those spots are available? You just can't have and to effectively do this, we need great guidance from our civic and gubernatorial leaders, because as we know, on the federal level, the president, no matter if you like him or not, this is not his strong point. He does not like giving direction for these type of things. He wants to put those on the state level. So we need our state level across the US to give great guidance, because remember, we've already seen it. Some guests won't like the guidance. And if you're putting that weight on a host at the front door to deal with a guest that isn't liking what you're doing, that's really dangerous. Because as a GM or an owner, I can't spend my whole shift at the front door facilitating that. We need to get back to operations. We need because there's going to be some guests that are like, I'm not wearing a mask. That's my civic liberty. Well, no, if the state told you have to wear a mask until you get to the table, you're wearing a mask. And you don't want that person lashing out at a paid employee in an unsafe situation. So we need great guidance, and we got to follow the guidance, and it will be an adjustment for everybody.
You brought up a good point, tying back to the stabilization. And as people are saying, okay, what is it going to take me financially to reopen? And if you were a walk-in restaurant before, well, you were also assuming that you would have a lot of bar business while people wait for tables. Well, 6 feet apart, you can't have that bar business. That revenue stream goes away. And that's also your most profitable revenue stream when you look at the cost of goods that you're dealing with there. You're also going to be missing out on the banquet revenue or large party revenue. And so thinking about that and not just saying, okay, how do I cut my expenses? But let me look at it as revenue center by revenue center. So whether it's bar, whether it's lunch, dinner, happy hour, banquets, what I have in large parties, all that, you need to strip that out and then build your labor model to account for that. And I think that's something that I didn't really think of until you started talking through that.
Yeah, everyone's got to look at their revenue centers, because it looks like in many states, there will be no private events for the next 3 to 4 months. If you get open, meaning there'll be no parties of 10 or more. So that's a revenue stream that's gone. The bar business, huge profit center. Might not be your biggest top line revenue, but it's definitely one of your most profitable. I mean, if you're going to have, they're saying maybe you have a bar where you have a 2-top, 6 feet, another 2-top, no people in the scrum waiting for a drink. It's going to really reduce top line revenue and profitability.
I think lunch business is going to really cripple people as well, because first of all, lunch was already one of the least efficient or least profitable revenue streams in a full service restaurant. And now think about what it's like for an employee to leave their place of work, to socially distance, whether it be in a line outside to go in, or you can't have as many people in there. Oh, well, I got to go to the next restaurant. And you kind of have that hour of power at lunch. And so I think that's something that people are going to have to figure out how to work around in that case.
Well, you brought up a great point. I think a lot of us focus on the in-room dining of not fancy restaurants, but more than fast casual. The fast casual world, I think, and look, and I'm someone who is a partner in a fast casual restaurant, how those business models are set up. Peak hours, 100 transactions an hour in a fast casual restaurant, person to person to person, close together, going through those lines. It doesn't matter if it's a Sweet Greens, a Chipotle, a Noodles and Company, a Pizzeria Locale 2.0. It's all based on getting those people through. That governance needs to be very, very looked at, opening up, because that's a dangerous situation where you've got 100, 120 people an hour going through a place, very close together. There's no way to get all the tabletops clean before the next person sits down. People are on their lunch break. They're irritable. They're just going to jump down on a table, hasn't been cleaned properly. We're going to have to slow down and space that out.
And weather, if it's raining, that's already, or it's snowing, that's already bad for restaurants, and you see the sales go down. But now nobody's going to leave their house if they have to go out to lunch or wait outside an establishment. They can't wait inside. So you miss out on that as well. So all these things that you don't really think of until you start trying to think of everything else.
Or waiting period. I mean, think about, I don't know if anybody's tried to go to Home Depot or Lowe's or something over the last couple of weeks, but you have to stand in line around the building for 2 hours to get in. I mean, just drive away. I have no patience. I won't wait.
I think it's amazing because I haven't gone to a Home Depot. My wife says I haven't gone to a Home Depot since we lived in Napa. And she said our biggest argument ever, I'm not very handy. I'll be on the record for that. I'm the least handy guy. One of our biggest arguments as a couple was 20 years ago at a Home Depot. Last time I was in Napa for American Airlines, I had my Uber driver stop me at that Home Depot so I could take a photo for D. I go, you remember this spot? So I'm just going to tell
one where I think I saw your plaque outside of Home Depot in Napa last time. It's on the tour, the Napa wine tour.
Yeah. I got beaten into submission at a Home Depot by my wife, and I've not come back.
Well, we'll get you back. We're going to get you back there. Come up to the sticks with me. Okay, at this time, we're going to get to questions here in just 1 second, but we like to do a free run freestyle where we ask just a couple questions to you. And Dustin, why don't you jump in on that?
Yeah. So Bobby, I'm curious, when this is kind of all over, what restaurant are you most looking forward to visiting when things kind of go back to normal? And of course, not any of your own restaurants, but somewhere else. What's your top pick?
I think my top pick, because I live in Boulder, I think one of my top picks would be, it'd be either two things. My wife and I and Craig Lewis and Courtney love having Sunday brunch after a long run at Arcana. We've not had brunch in 8 weeks at Arcana. Or my wife definitely is a fan of Brian Dayton's gin and tonic cart at Carita. And then she will be very happy to get out of the house with me and go up and see Brian and get a great cocktail.
And the best view in Boulder.
Love it.
Yeah.
Best view of the Flatirons in Boulder.
Yep. That's probably be in the same Sunday. It would be brunch, nap.
I like that.
Go back to.
You've earned it.
We've done that.
A babysitter. Yeah.
So, Bobby, if you were to open up a restaurant from scratch, designed to prosper in this new normal, what would that look like?
If I was going to do a restaurant from scratch that would benefit from the new normal, I would first call a great attorney to negotiate my lease. And so I called Mike Laszlo. I'd have him hammer, and I would try to get my target as small as possible so I could do a great 6-table restaurant, evenly spaced, based on traditional Italian classics like uber, not expensive, uber delicious, low touch to the table, no menus, you know what you're eating coming in. Let's say Mondays is tortelloni and brodo, bronzino, that's what it is. No one touches a menu. There's a wine flight, boom.
Back to the romance in the old school Italy with just, love it.
Yeah.
I get to ask my favorite question, which very fortunate to do. Any words of wisdom you would like to impart on the people listening here today, or just general words of wisdom you have given the crisis?
Yeah, I hear a lot of people saying they've been bored or they're kind of down and things like that. I know I have not been bored because the IRC has kept me more than busy. But maybe if we're going to be closed another month and maybe you were in a funk for the last 6 weeks, take this last month and say, hey, I'm going to get myself in great mental, physical, spiritual shape for when we open. Sure, maybe I didn't use all my time wisely during the last 6 weeks, but let's just stop. Tomorrow's a different day. Let's really embrace taking our medicine for the next month.
You bring up a good point with that, Bobby, because they say states may open on certain dates, but that's almost a mirage for us in the restaurant industry, because let's say the ban lifts on the 21st of May. It's not as though every restaurant's going to open up on the 21st of May, or every restaurant person will go back to work there. So to get your hopes up and say, I can't wait to go back to my regular world, being able to mentally prepare for that and also figure out how to keep that sanity through that point and then beyond, I think is going to be really key.
Yeah, 100%.
And that reminds me of a saying I love: if you have time to lean, you have time to clean.
Exactly.
If there's a lot of time to lean right now, why aren't we doing something?
That's why Lazo did his hair.
That's an old restaurant saying.
That's right. And it's
My
true.
day.
That comes,
Definitely.
yeah. And I take this opportunity. I talked to somebody this morning who's looking for a law job, and it's going to be tough out there for all industries. Get out there, do as much work as you can, and show that you're ready to go kill it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe like if I would have been a sommelier who'd never looked at a P&L statement or a GM that had problems with things like that. You should be working on there's so many things available on the internet. If I was a sommie, I am a somm, but I've worked on these skill sets. If I didn't know what was going on with a P&L statement or whatever, go online, take a course or figure it out online and really become great at something that you're not.
Yep. Make yourself indispensable. I mean, come on.
Yes.
You have the opportunity here to do something, and why not take advantage of it? I don't.
Yeah, now is the time to diversify your skill set.
And I hope every somm out there, I mean, we should have the highest theory scores ever next year for the MS. And if we don't, that's those candidates' problem there.
It's absolutely. We have a question here, a couple questions. One from Brandon Wickham. What about the old lady who barely speaks English and runs a pupusa spot? How do those types of restaurants keep up?
Well, that's a great question. That's why the IRC is there. Brandon Wickham, perfect question. Look, that is why the IRC is doing what it's doing.
Yeah.
It's to protect the smallest and give the resources to the smallest. That's what it's there for.
And another question.
That's why we had our carve out differently than the catch-all for everybody.
Another question here, Bobby. It's been proposed that outdoor seating can skirt around dining room restrictions and minimize risk to guests. What do you think about this and modifying any of your places?
Well, I think it's a great idea. I don't know where the science is of minimizing guests. I mean, it just goes back to social distancing. But yeah, I mean, look, I plan on accessing as much as my patio as possible because I'm taking tables out of the inside.
Yeah.
And it could also be a way to do takeout business too and help on that, where it's a new takeout experience where you walk up and you order there and we can serve you drinks while you wait. And how do you use that as a way to drive revenue? Instead of having to do full service out there, is there a modified version of that can still be staffing light and not have to be, not with the unknowns of how many people are going to come, and also to be able to drive some of that beverage revenue as well when the sun is shining.
I've heard people talk about it. I mean, we're here in Colorado, in Boulder and in Aspen, people talking about maybe shutting down little parking lots and shutting down streets and having the city, kind of lift restrictions on open container to allow that to happen, forgetting all the liquor law stuff. It's interesting to me. Would you ever, as a restaurateur, Bobby, would you put people in a parking lot? I mean, can you maintain an experience on asphalt on a 90-degree day? I'm not saying they're not good ideas. I'm just wondering how you would tackle that.
I think this is why we have to really look at it and really work. Look, those are great ideas that people are. I love that everyone's coming up with different ideas, but no, You're not doing a 20th anniversary Frosca experience on the tarmac in 90 degrees. That's not curated. And we should just make the dining room safe, make whatever patio situation you have safe, but get a stabilization package so you can get through this time of uncertainty and not be doing cockamamie things like being out in the parking lot.
Yeah. Well, Bobby, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here today. It's been a great conversation, and we're just thrilled with the work you're doing. Anything else you want to say or about IRC?
I just want to tell Angela at the IRC, I'm sorry I'm late for the Zoom call. This has been so much fun. I will be back on in a second.
You can jump.
Congrats to you and the team at Frosca for your beard nomination. Amidst all this chaos, you've had one hell of a week.
Yes.
So congrats from all of us.
Yes,
Big
congratulations.
Thanks. And Danette signed that contract you sent her for another 20 years of marriage with me. So that's great.
Good, good, good.
Excellent.
Thanks so much, Bobby.
Thank you, everybody. Everybody, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, and this will live on YouTube, hopefully forever. Send it around. We've been getting a great response, people watching these after the fact. Send us any ideas you have for future episodes. We are here to provide information and a great free run discussion. That's who we are. Sabato, Dustin, Bobby, thank you. And we will see you all next time.
See you guys.
Thanks, everybody.